Hey folks, Carl here and welcome to episode 7 of Tamiya's mid-production Tiger. Okay folks, the dio is still drying off. We've gone and added a few more drops of the still water on, so we have been concentrating on the tank. Now I've done nothing extra since part 6 apart from add the first layer of Tamiya's soil effect dark earth on the tank, and we have added strategically in some certain places. So we've added a little bit on the roof here and down the side of the tank, as though that's the point where some of the crew get in and get out. We put some on the wheels and some on the tracks, and we've also added onto the front mudguard here, some down the mudguards on the side, on the mudguards on the back, and a very small amount on the bottom here. Now the plan is, I did this about 5 or 10 minutes ago, so it's still wet. So once this is dry, so then we will take the wet mud, place it onto the dio, and then paint on while it's in place on the dio. We will spread on the wet mud around the tracks, the front of the tank, on the wheels, on the back, and probably a little bit on the front as well. So I am now waiting for this stuff to dry out, so we shall talk to you in a moment. Okay folks, we are motoring on. I got a little bit carried away with the base, but first of all I'm going to show you the tank. We've gone and added the matte coat, and we have gone and added a little bit more of the Humbrol weathering powder, the black, and we have added to the back of the tank on the exhausts, so they are now looking a lot darker and dirtier. And we've added into these grills as well to make those look sooty, so the back of those are now sooted up. And we have also done the turret. So that is all done. I was thinking about adding some lighter dust to the whole tank, but I've decided against it. Now that it's matted up, it looks okay. So the tank is as good as ready. All we need to add now is, once we get it onto the dio, we will be adding some of the wet ground mud to make it look a little bit wet. So the base, we are motoring on with the base now. I've left this in different stages of completion. Let me move this camera a little bit. So as you can see, this part here is still green with not much on it. So we've been building this terrain's snow from AK. We've been building up in layers. Now we're starting off by putting a very thin layer on like this and allowing it to dry, because if we try and get a thicker coat on, it just becomes a mess, and I mean a real mess. So that's the first coat. Then we get another second coat, we put a little bit more down, it gets a little bit thicker. We then get a third coat down, like in this corner here and this section here, and after the third coat we went and we sprinkled some of the snow micro balloons on, and that gives it that fluffy look. It's going to be difficult to pick up with it being so white, but we'll zoom in a little bit and see what we can do. So yeah, so there's the first part, a very thin layer. Second part, a little bit thicker, and then the third part, put the third on, and then we coat it with the micro balloons to give it that fluffy snow effect. And we've done the same in this corner. Now these parts that you can see here are the snow sprinkles, and this dries looking like ice. Now this part here is still wet, but when it dries it looks like this, and it looks like very thin snow that's gone very icy. So that is where we are up to. And what I've done is wherever I've put the still water, I've gone around with this snow sprinkles to make it look icy around the edge. You can see it more on here and on this bit of water here and here. So that's where we're up to. I am now going to go away and continue. We're going to give this its third coat. We're going to give this side its first coat, and there's little bits here and there where it's had one coat already. So I should be back in a few days or in a moment, so talk to you then. Okay folks, it has been a few days and the dio is finished. So we made the decision to make the dio look as though it was all frozen solid and not the wet, muddy, icy look. So how are we looking? So here we are. Finished. So we went and we put all the snow on the rest and down the middle here. We then added this icy look on the tracks, and of course we added snow to the sides and the tops of the trees. Now this icy look, if we zoom you in a bit, along and up this track, yeah, and on where we put the still water and all that stuff, this was achieved using the snow micro balloons and the snow sprinkles with, instead of using water to mix it up, we used some of the Vallejo still water, and we just used a little cup, and we did an equal mix of the micro balloons and the snow sprinkles, and then wetted it down so it was a very, well, not overly liquidy substance, but wet and movable and pliable. And then we just brushed it on, and we laid it on thicker where we wanted it thicker, in like these grooves down the bottom here, little bits and pieces, so it looks as though the ground is frozen solid. And of course everything's been coated with the micro balloons all around this area here, top of the trees, all the rest of it. So that is the dio done. So what else did we do to this? So as you can see along and in the center part, it looks a little bit muddy, yeah, around the edges of where the track are, around the puddles, all down this part here. And all we did there is we took some of the train's wet ground, we put it into a little tub. This is dried out now almost, and we just added a tiny little bit of water to thin it out. We then placed it on a old fanned out brush like this, and we used a cocktail stick like so. You can see this is actually the one I used. So we dipped and we soaked the brush in the water, and we then flicked the brush and folded it down the edge of the snow, and we moved in a little bit in places like here into the center like here, and we just randomly sprayed mud. You can see there's a little bit more down here as well. Obviously we've left inside the woodland nice and clean, and so it's fresh snow down there. Obviously the tank is travelling up and down this track. So that is the dio done and ready for our tank. Now when you last saw the tank, we had put on some of the Tamiya dry looking soil, and we were waiting, and we matte coated, and we were waiting for that to dry. So since then we have gone and we have added this stuff, the wet ground effect. So it doesn't look any different from above. You might be able to see around the edges here there's a little bit more mud, but if we take this off and we look at this part, we added some of the wet mud over the top here. If we zoom in, you can see that mud looks wet, but we're not wanting the wet look, we're wanting that frozen look. So I'll put this to one side a minute and we'll show you the rest of the tank. You can see on the top of here again we've got that wet look mud around the edges, places where it would gather here onto the back. And this is all muddy up the back of here, and then we've gone and we've done the tracks and the wheels as well. We had a bit of an accident while we were doing that. One of the tracks split in two, so we had to do a quick field repair. The wheels are done and the front of the track is done. Now this stuff, we put this, it dries reasonably quick, so we put one layer down with the brush, and by the time we'd gone around and done, let me zoom back out a bit, by the time we'd gone around and done all the bits on the tank, we came back to like the front bit here and we added some more to give it that more of a textured look, and the same on the back. So what I plan to do now is, because the diorama is a frozen solid, we are going to mix up. No, we're not going to mix any of that up because we don't want it. We want it to look as though there's water and ice settled. So we are going to use the snow sprinkles raw. And this stuff is quite watery. So it will move around in the pot, and all we are going to do, we shall do it on the turret, we are going to add some ice to this mud. So we shall zoom in a bit. So we're just going to pick some up on the brush, and then we're going to find where the ice would settle. Like so. Now where we spread it out thin, it will almost disappear. So we want it in thick blobs, and then we want it in thin parts as well. So I'm going to follow any of the grooves where the ice stroke water might fit. Now I'm going to have to let this dry and then go around it again if it needs any extra, because I say when it dries this stuff goes quite thin looking. So that is all as I am looking for at the moment. It's just like that. Now this will take a good 2 or 3 hours to dry. Yeah. So all we've done is put a little bit in the groove around the whoever it is that sits in there. My brain's gone completely blank. It'll either be the radio op or the gunner, one or the other. And we're just building it up. So I'm going to leave that be now, and I'm going to go around and we're going to do exactly the same on here. So we are going to want it in the tracks. We are just literally going to fill the inside edge of these tracks with this ice. It's supposed to be snow, but when it actually dries it looks more like ice than snow. to go any further than that. We do need to do all of these tracks, so I'm just going to add little lumps of ice around the track and make it look frozen rather than wet and muddy. So I am going to carry on as if we're on camera. I'm just going to follow the edge of those tracks. So like I say, I'm going to carry on and get this done. You don't need to see me do this because it's quite time consuming. And I shall let it dry and we'll come back and see if it needs any more. So, see you in a moment. Okay folks, this is now dry-ish, and you can see from that how much has actually disappeared. So what I'm going to do is the same on the main tank. I put it on a lot thicker, and this is still a little bit wet, but it has really started to disappear. So I am going to mix some up, the same as I did the road. So I'll put some of the snow micro balloons in there. We are going to get our brush, which is here. We are going to throw in some of this. Good dollop. That goes really dry as that mixes in, and then we'll get our still water, and we will put some in there until that turns into a runny paste, like so. Maybe a little bit more. More drips. There we go. So we now have a runny-ish paste, and we are just going to go all over again where we want the ice to be. Now this will dry a lot more white, so we have to be a little bit more careful with this stuff. I'll take some of that off on the high points, like so, and we shall now again leave that to dry, and I will go and do the rest of this tank. So, talk to you in a moment. Okay folks, that is the second coat on, and I've gone and added a little bit onto the tracks on the side of the turret. I'll zoom in. So you can now see, make it a pointy stick, around this edge here. You can see where it looks icy, and also down the side and in there. Putting that other layer on has added that extra little bit of an icy look, and we've gone and we've added some into this back box here, and like I say, we've added some onto the tracks. And on the main body again, we've gone around anywhere we touched with the ice. So we get a little bit more onto the wheels and into the tracks, onto the front of the tracks, front of the tank, into the body parts here, around the tools and on some of the hatches, and a little bit on the bodywork and stuff, in the tow ropes and the wooden poles. And of course on the back we've got a big pile on top of the jack, some around the bottom of the exhausts, and of course around the bottom of the tank and on the tracks on the back. So it's still a little bit damp, it's dry to touch. I can imagine if we start getting rough with it and scraping it, it's going to come away. So this is going to get 24 hours to dry, well, until this time tomorrow. I will then set up where I take my photographs over there, and we'll get some nice photographs done. So this video is going to be, that's it, this is the tank and the diode done. So I will get the diorama and we shall take a quick look and see what it all looks like together. Obviously there's going to be some video on the end of this episode, some pictures when I get the pictures done tomorrow. So there we have it, completed and finished and on the diorama. It looks like he's coming around the trees and shooting into the distance. So that is Tamiya's mid-production Tiger 1 in a winter diorama finished. So the stuff we have used obviously a Tamiya model, picture frame, some balsa wood for the trees. We've used a Tamiya's mid-production Tiger model in 1/35th scale for the kit. We used UMP primer to prime the tank with. We then painted with Tamiya's XF German grey. We then washed that or filtered that with Tamiya's NATO black, very very thin. We then made the winter whitewash as though it's been painted with the UMP winter clay wash, and that had several coats, and then it was gloss coated, and that pulled the white back a bit and exposed some of the more grey areas, so making the paintwork a little bit more natural looking. We have then gone and added some rust effects on the boot using Humbrol's powders, rust colour, and then we sooted it up using Humbrol's black, the same on the turret. We blacked that up with Humbrol. And the dio has been made with obviously a picture frame. We used some polyfiller to build up the base. We then used Tamiya's textured dirt to give it a coat over the main parts. We then went over with AK's terrain wet ground and got us the wet muddy tracks, and inside here we then started to apply the terrain's snow. Now this is quite a big tub, and if I open it up I'll show you how much. It wasn't full to the brim, it was probably full to about here. So we have probably used around about a quarter of that pot to make that whole diorama. So there's at least another 2, 3, maybe 4 dioramas at a stretch left in there. And on top of there, for the edges and things, we've used AK's snow sprinkles and AK's snow micro balloons, and we've used them individually. We use this to sprinkle over the top of the snow, and we use this to edge and fill in the puddles. Oh yes, because of course we used Vallejo's still water to make puddles, and then we've used them mixed together to give the icy look on the mud track and on the tank. So there we have it, Tamiya's mid-production King. I keep saying King Tiger, it's not a King Tiger, it's a Tiger 1. So done. So as always, thank you very very much for watching. Be good, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next build. Ta-ta.